Hello, good evening, everyone. Welcome to the October 5th meeting of the Norwood Cultural Council. We are here tonight to just go through our agenda that we posted. And we do have Denise Kiley with us as well. She's on the phone, but is not on video this evening. So there are 5 of us here today. For a quorum, should we need a vote, although we don't have any voting on the agenda. If we wanted to start on the first thing on the agenda is a treasury update, although I know that Sean, we didn't have one necessarily from you last month, so there may not be necessarily one, but I'll just leave that open for you. And then I just wanted to follow up with the donation thing that came up last month. Oh, and we might have lost her. She's having internet problems that were being resolved. She came back on a second ago, but she might be going in and out. I will just let you guys know and the public know that Mark Wood at the town hall did get back to us and told us that he was just concerned about the state law and the town laws about our ability to take donations. And so he did confirm that that's indeed acceptable and something that local cultural councils do. And so he's going to help us and follow up and give us the information of how we can take donations virtually as well during this time, the pandemic. So I asked him if there was anything we needed to do, and I can say this again for Schlunch. And he said no, that he would set it up and then let us know. So that's good news for any events that we do want to do, or even if we want to share out that information around the time of the grant cycle when we're doing that sort of publicity, and people, should they want to contribute, would have an avenue to do so. Do we still see Schlunch with us, or is just the connection maybe? She's not here. I'll just keep going, guys. You interrupt me if you have questions. So for the MCC updates, Timothea has been sort of doing reminders about the upcoming grant cycle, and Amy has been doing a lot of those meetings, which is great, and she and I have been talking, so she's up on that. But in terms of what the Mass Cultural Council has given us lately, the only thing that Amy wanted to give the heads up on, because she couldn't be here tonight, was that we do need to look at the voting dates, because the last meeting she attended with Timothea gave her the impression that we still need to be done by December. So we just need to look at that at the end of the meeting and make sure we have time allotted, knowing that we're not getting the books until mid-November. So that's going to be what it is.
Kate, I was at that last meeting Timothea had on the 24th.
Oh, great.
Yeah, and she did say that end of December is the preferred date, but that if any individual council is having issues, we can always reach out to her individually if we needed an exception.
Okay.
But you're right, we're not getting the panel books, with a lot of notice to be able to vote on in December.
Right. So maybe we can talk about like a strategy that we want to do. I think like it's taken us last couple of years, it's been about 2 meetings, right? And like we've kind of knocked out all the no's in the beginning and then been able to go.
Might have been 2 or 3 meetings.
Yeah. And I feel like we should budget 3 just because with COVID and some of these might be wonky, exceptions that we may need to talk through. So we might have a little extra time on our hands looking at that. Amy didn't really have any other notes at the time. She sent out all of the school, to all of the schools, enrichment coordinators, and I believe principals, an email with the slides that we shared to you guys last week about the grant cycle process, as well as the new criteria given COVID that people can be considering. And I'm still sending that out to organizations. Basically, it's the same email letter that's just saying, here's the information you need in a PDF format. Here's the link to that same information. Please let us know if you have any other questions. And I'm sending it out to that list that I shared with you, that Excel sheet, which you guys both, some of you did give feedback on. And I think I need to go back and reach out to you for contact information, because some of you guys knew some of the people for like Art Week. And I think Mary Paz has a couple contacts, because I want to send them out personally for a lot, especially for the folks that were going to participate in Art Week. So that's it for the grants team. Do you guys have any questions about that slideshow, that slide deck, or that spreadsheet that I shared out?
I thought the slide deck was exceptionally well done. I just want to say kudos to the subcommittee who created it.
Oh, well, thank you. That was, most of it was built by Timothea's group. Yeah, and so we had, that made it much easier. And then Schlange and Amy went through and added some notes about that, you know, technical pieces that I think people get tripped up on. So I think that was helpful too. And then I just added sort of our mission stuff and the language around our priorities and criteria that also came from the state in terms of COVID and everything. So
I felt like the tutorial was easy to follow. I tried to look at it with an eye towards, if this is the first time I'm looking at it and applying, can I follow these steps? And it was just, it was well done.
Okay, great. Honey, this is being live streamed, so you can't say hi tonight. All right. Sorry about that. That's my son, Jude, who's in 2nd grade at the Oldham Elementary School. They're used to being able to, you know, come in and wave hi and stuff, but we have an audience. So anyway, moving right along, if nobody has questions. Denise, I don't want to skip over you. You're good? Just because I can't see you.
Totally fine. Totally fine. I'll pop in when you need me.
Okay, great. So I think that's the only thing there, besides we need to figure out those dates, and I'm still sending those out. For the addendum, oh, there's Schlange. Hi.
Hi, I might get booted off again. I don't know what's going on.
I know, and what we can do is set up a time where I can talk to you. The only relevant thing is that I think I sent it to you, but we can set up a virtual donation site, so that will be good when we want it. And I don't know, do you have anything for us while you are with us?
No.
Okay.
No, not right.
No problem. Basically, we just talked about the that given both Deborah and Amy attended the meeting on the 24th with Timothea, and she did highlight the fact that we do need to have our voting done in December, by December, the end of December, and if we had any issues, we should reach out. But so we'll talk at the end of this meeting about a strategy for that, given that we don't get books until November, mid-November. And I think that's it. Oh, did you have any questions about the slide deck or the spreadsheet that we sent out? Amy has sent out to all the schools the information about the grant cycle, and I'm still sending out to the arts organizations and the people that were going to do Art Week and things like that. And in some cases, I'm coming back to people to get contact information. And then Deborah complimented the slideshow, and I gave you and Amy credit for like doing the tech notes like on the process, so that where people get caught up that you guys were aware of. So do you have anything on that slide deck or the spreadsheet?
Nope.
All good? Okay. So the only I'd like to throw it to you guys for addendum first, and then I can talk about what the subcommittee talked about. Does anybody have anything, questions, concerns?
The only thing I just wanted clarity on, and I apologize I couldn't make the last meeting, was that I noticed in the notes about paying out grantees regardless if they held their programs. Is that correct?
Yeah, so that came from a note from Timothea that was a recommendation to all LLCs to resolve 2019, 2020, that that people, yeah, I think that's right. That's the, and we talked about it a little bit last meeting, but just that because of hardships, that we are going to grant those allocations, and that's what they're recommending that we do. So that might make it easier at this point, because we could just decide how we want to communicate, like where they're at, ask where they're at or what's happened, and then do like a more
Now, normally we wait for them to send an invoice, right, for reimbursement.
yes.
So in this case, we're sort of proactively saying the year has passed. We know you didn't have a program, but because of COVID, we are giving you this check anyway. Is that sort of what you're saying?
Yeah, that's the way that I took it. And when you read those recommendations, and I can, I think I shared those to you before the last meeting.
Yeah. Oh, no, I saw the recommendation. I just didn't know the process. Like without an invoice, how does something actually get paid? Doesn't the town need a form or an invoice or something to pay?
Yeah, makes sense to me. I would think, right, I think it just means in terms of, like, even if they didn't have it. That's what you're saying. Yeah,
Yeah.
but they still need to check in. But maybe, like, Shlanch, do you feel like we should nudge people to give them what you need? Or
I'll take a look, because I do know we got like 5 or 6 from, I think it was Oldham. Nope. One of the schools sent all of theirs that they were able to do it before the shutdown. So
Right.
they sent me all of their stuff. I'm going to take a look and see. I think we got one other one. So I think there were like maybe about 5 or 6 that had come in since the last meeting. So I was going to take a look at those and see how many now my only question about that was that we have a lot of people that have said either we're having it in the fall, or we're going to have a different version, or we're going to postpone it till the spring. So not that I don't want to give them this money, but if, for example, if nothing was done by the schools, I can understand hardship for artists, and not that I want to jip the schools out of the money either. It's just kind of, where do we kind of stand with all of that stuff? Because if they're not having the program and the program isn't going to take place, then that's more money we have for the next grant cycle that we can give to, like, if the program's going to take place the next year. So I just didn't know what kind of conversations. And I mean, I'm happy to discuss offline what was discussed at the last meeting, since I couldn't attend, but
Yeah.
just wanted just get a general idea if a decision had been made that we were just going to give everybody the money regardless, because then I'm just not going to bother and just figure out ways to cut checks to everybody, because it's
Right.
a lot of follow-up for all these people.
right. I think we didn't get into that too deeply, but I would say that for even with the schools and the PTOs who run these programs, they too weren't able to fundraise and hold major events that they normally hold in the spring, which they use to fill up their PTO coffers. So everybody's hurting. So I know what you're saying, like, they're not artists necessarily, but the same money that they need to pay for enrichment this year to put
Yeah,
toward
I didn't on that,
Yeah.
that they have money.
Yeah, so I think, and given the amounts, it's just, and I think what the MCC is communicating is just like nobody's wanting to feel like, okay, it's not worth it. It makes more sense to just be generous with the first intent, and then they, sort of start over with the next year, is the impression I got. But I'm happy to talk about it offline too and clarify some of those things, especially because, you need to know like how to account for these things for the town. So we can go back to Timothea and ask like, what's the basic, you know, what can we ask for, and that sort of thing. Because
Okay.
we want it to be clear to them too, and we just sent them this information for next year. And they're, you know, if they need to settle up last year, it'd be easiest to say like, that's separate, like send in your thing, it's done. Like now move on to, let's move, you know, just for you, for us, and for even for them, I think we should clarify that. So do you want to set up like a time you and I can follow up, and maybe Amy?
No, I think I just need to know, you know, I think I just need to take a look at what's been sent in, who we're paying, and then see what's left over, because we're going to have the allocation meeting in November, because our parts 1 and 2 of the annual report is due, I believe mid-November. So in the next meeting, we're going to have to determine all of our allocations. So then once I have all of that information for what money's left over, what hasn't been paid out, we can just discuss it as a group then as to who we want to, if we want to just across the board, just write checks to everyone who hasn't had a program, or if we, you know, even though it's a recommendation from LLC, that doesn't mean we necessarily have to do it, and see if we've heard any communications in the next month from these people after following up.
Okay. Yeah, I think you should definitely have a chance to like see where it's at, and then we can go from there. That makes a lot of sense. There was some date when you said there's some parts of the annual report to do in the middle of November. I remember seeing something that something's due in October too. Just make sure, and I can look back at that, but I don't know if it's on your radar or not, or if it's something that I need to help with.
I'll take a look. I got the allocations are due by November 16th.
Okay, great. So maybe it's just like a bookkeeping, like what am I trying to say? An administrative thing that I saw. Okay, cool.
Kate, it was the priorities that were due in October, which I think you already sent in.
Oh, okay, great.
Was that what you're thinking of?
I thought it was a mid-October. I'm gonna check, but I hope so. In that case, we're good. Okay, great. So anybody else have any addenda items? Okay, excellent. So Arati and Denise and I just met. And Chris was unable to join, but after the last conversation, we wanted to sort of break off and talk about things that we could possibly do in lieu of the photo contest that we had talked about. Ideas that came up last month were a lights festival or a lighting event, and meaning like a decoration event, and a StoryCorps idea, which we know that other organizations in town have talked about a little bit. So we came up with a great conversation. One, I'll just say that the light event, we think trying to rush into that this year without any personal contact would be probably a little too much, and people are sort of at their wits' end with trying to do extra things. So we didn't think it was a good use of our sort of return on investment or use of our energy to try and get folks to do extra things when everybody's like, it takes everyone extra time right now to just do the normal things for all the crazy reasons. So one of the things that came up was, and I'll let Denise and Arati chime in. Actually, Arati, why don't you talk about the recipe idea?
Yeah, I was just suggesting, like, why don't we do 12 months different traditional cultural recipes, a booklet or a calendar style, and then, display 12 different cultural recipes through the year round, like. So Oh, Katie, why don't you, the final points you just go with, like how? will you-
Okay, great. Yeah, excellent. So we were chatting about it, and we really loved the idea around how it connects to some of our priorities around our own cultural diversity in our town. And then we talked about how people are consuming things, and then sort of transitioned into using it as social media content. And then the conversation evolved to doing it around the 150th to have content that we can push out during that whole year as a celebration of the different cultures in Norwood, but also we could highlight different restaurants or different chefs. We could highlight notable people in Norwood. For example, say it's March and we want to talk about the different holidays in March. One of them is St. Patrick's Day. So we could get somebody, there's no shortage of Irish folks or whatever. So we ask somebody, oh, well, what's their famous recipe for Irish soda bread? But then we can also highlight Limey's Pub or something like that. So it's set for every month and holiday. And so the subcommittee can continue to work on how we want that to, how deep we want it to go. But essentially it would be like a post that would draw you into it to say, today we're celebrating Hanukkah and we're looking at so-and-so's recipe, and Hanukkah is this, a little blurb about the thing and maybe how it ties to Norwood, and then the food piece. So we thought that was a really good draw for people, as well as something that we could manage easily as a team and not have to put too many costs into. So we're
Just
excited
purely
about that.
social media, Kate? Purely a
Sorry?
social media campaign? Like this is not an in-person event at
No,
all?
Right. So, what we don't know is what our safety measures are going to be at that time, obviously. So if we're aiming it for the 150th, we've got some time to plan that. It could be that we have a lot more options in terms of doing in-person things. And we could talk about, tying other events into it at that time. But I think there's some, and I can talk a little bit about 150th, although I don't have a lot of updates, but I think we'll have other opportunities to collaborate on events with the 150th. And then the only other thing to your question, Deborah, is that it could be that we want to do some kind of hard copy of this. If people love it and if we're finding that they're really, really into it, and at the end of that 150 celebration, maybe we fold it in somehow to the 150th cookbook or something of Norwood. So we can certainly leave that on the table and see what the cost would be and how we could maybe fundraise with it. But we know, just knowing that it's a social media thing that it can sort of stand on its own is good too, I think. Since it came up for the 150th, one of the signature events is a international festival or a heritage event. And so next steps for that planning, myself and Katie Neal Rizzo are going to be, I think, heading up the planning for it. But we're going to be in consultation with Helen because she has so much, she knows a lot about the last couple that went on. So, but we have a lot of good ideas around that. I don't want to say too much because we haven't even started meeting about it yet, but I can certainly see the Cultural Council coming into play there in terms of connecting people and helping bring people in. But this sounds to me more like there's lots of food in person and music and performances and art of what's it called, craft, this sort of thing. So that could be a lot of fun. And we were thinking this time of year. So think this time of year, 2022. So lots of time for that as well. Bharati and Denise, what else did we talk about? So for StoryCorps, the next steps for that are that I'm going to reach out to the Norwood Historical Society and the library and Norwood Community Media, who has a lot of good resources, and see if we can have a collaborative meeting to talk about doing something together on this, because at one point the library was working on something, and my impression from asking around is that they've tabled that because of all the craziness, and the librarians are all consumed with functioning in this new reality. We thought that the next step was just about a good, excuse me, I'm like, none of the words are coming. A good next step would to have an exploratory conversation about doing something together and around what theme, but bringing people from, old folks, new folks, people that have been around a long time, people that just moved here, people that represent different cultures, and what sort of the culture of Norwood means to them. And we think that would probably have a very fruitful, lots of different sort of examples of what that would mean to different people, lots of interesting things. So, and then to talk about how we could do it with those collaborators, to see what we come up with. Not putting a timeline on it now, obviously, because it's hard to do that anyway for anything, but so that we can do it right and see if people are interested. So, anything else, Denise and Arati, that I missed from our conversation? Oh,
No, you covered it really well. I think you gave a good explanation. I think we all know what we talked about.
excellent. Okay. The last little thing was that we talked about starting an arts calendar, and I think this has come up in other conversations, maybe around the strategic plan and all the, I feel like it's been brought up a couple of times. And we were thinking we'd like to try and start just collaboratively collectively doing it. Like someone to just start a spreadsheet. And everyone's frozen. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, great. What are your thoughts about doing that? If we sent something out that was just like what I'm talking about is an arts calendar or a cultural events calendar that we could sort of host, so that and I'm going to talk to the town about where it could live besides Facebook, which is not ideal for everyone. But this calendar would host all arts and cultural events. So anything from a high school production to an open studios to the Garden Society to a choral performance, all of that stuff that we are sort of have our fingers in a little bit, but just have a home base for it so people know what's going on.
Yes.
So does anyone want to, I'm seeing a spreadsheet in my mind, but does anyone want to put something together that we could just throw out to the group that we could sort of populate, like a shared document that we could start populating? Don't all answer with. Sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
I said we can definitely make a sheet related and then match up with some events like that. And
yeah, so it would just have I can share something. It would just have like an event, who the association was, and like the time of year that we think it is, or the date, and a contact. We leave some room for contact. I can do it probably quicker than I can describe it. So, and then I'll share it to you guys, and then we can all put input into it. Would that be okay?
sure.
All right.
Okay, this is intended to be events that are open to the public, right? Or would this also include closed school events?
I think it would be public events, but we might want to do something separate so that people know what we support at the schools and the programming that they're, the tax dollars is helping support at the schools. But it might need to be might
have to be separate, because a lot of the school events aren't necessarily for the public. Just walk in and go to the school auditorium,
Right. So it'd be good to share that, but in a way that doesn't confuse people if they look at a calendar. Yeah, good point.
Okay, I think what we should do with that is basically do a tab of how we support the schools, and then have a list of the things but no dates next to them, so they don't end up with people in their lobbies wanting to see the programs.
No dates. Makes sense.
Yeah.
Got it.
And then
Okay.
I also think that this is definitely going to be like a working document, just and because it's so different this year. You know, a lot of things that would have happened, I don't think are going to happen. Like the Fine Arts Festival probably won't happen the way it would normally have happened. So it's the kind of thing that I think we put the skeleton of it together, and then as things maybe open up or change a little bit, then we start to populate it a little bit more.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it gives us time to build it and talk to
Yep.
the town and like find the web support for it. And yeah, but like I think the long view is in normal times, like what this would look like.
100%.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. I don't have anything else, but does anybody have anything pressing? Oh, we need to talk about when we're going to meet. I'd love to hear you guys, your ideas about how to sort of attack the process this year of the grant allocations. I'm going to look at my calendar on my phone. The application, I'm like having one of those, the words aren't coming. Actual application process stops on the 16th of November. So somebody remind, when do we usually get the books? Like, is there a gap after that? I have no memory. So how long do we have to wait usually? Do you guys remember?
Maybe a couple weeks.
Couple
But
weeks.
the whole process is late this year.
Right. Right. So the whole process, so the applications close on the 16th. So does that mean we're not going to get the books until the December 1st, like December, the last week of?
Probably late November.
Right. So after Thanksgiving.
And I wonder if when the books are incomplete, can we still get a head start and look at the applications that have come in? I don't know if MCC releases partial panel books.
That would sure help, wouldn't it?
It would, because if there were 20 or 30 to look at early and waiting for the other 20 or 30 to come in, we'd have a little head start.
Okay. So otherwise, the goal we should have then is to meet December 7th, which we would have met anyway.
Mhm.
And once again, like maybe the next week, like that's the way we're going to have to approach it. And then I think it's getting real close to holiday time and probably not feasible. And then, so you're saying that it's taken us 3 meetings before? That we should budget 3 meetings, you think? Ishlan?
2 at a minimum, but I think one year it took us 3, but I might be misremembering.
Okay, I guess I need information to know if we can get any ahead of time. And if not, what's the absolute cutoff? Solange, we're just talking about our strategy given the condensed.
Oh, I was here. Just I had a
you were
kid in the
Oh, okay. Okay, so you heard.
Yeah.
Do you have any thoughts on allocating time? Like we can meet the 7th, or we can meet not on, like we can meet the 30th maybe? No, we won't. It depends on when we get it. How am I, yeah.
So I think the panel books, because they're automatically populated, it's not like someone at the LCC, MCC, whatever, puts them together. It's just the applications are compiled
Okay.
according to their numbers. So they should be available within the week of the deadline
Okay, that would be good.
closing. And then we typically have our first meeting the beginning of December, that first one in December. And then what we've done in the past is that first meeting is to discuss all the rejected applications.
Right.
And then we have a second meeting to go over and what's happened to discuss all of the applications we want to fund. And what's typically happened is that has gone over into additional,
Third meeting, yeah.
to a third meeting. So what I think we need to do this year is for our next meeting, we have to figure out what what the allocation is, which is kind of standard. But in order to save us time, we should figure out how we're funding applications in that meeting. So we don't, because usually what happens is we spend a lot of time in one of those two voting meetings on when we're discussing the applications on how we're going to allocate the funds. Like we had, an entire meeting 2 years ago, and
We
then
did the whole mathematical formulas, that took forever. So if we've got the formula set up ahead of time, and we should, because we have so much experience with it now, it will make the meetings go quicker.
And so then last year, a completely different formula was used. So I think we need to do that prior to going into the voting meetings. And then that will save us some time and not having to do that while we're voting on applications. And there's always going to be some applications that are going to be subject to outside of the criteria of how we set up the voting allocation. But if we have kind of like a standard way to go in at a time rather than doing that on the fly, then it would make things go a lot quicker. We might not need that third meeting.
Agreed. So that times out perfectly. So on November 2nd, our next meeting date, that will be our main agenda item, which will be to discuss how we're going to do our allocations, what the sort of approach is going to be. And we should all look back at our notes the last 2 years, because it evolved. And so we want to have that history fresh in our minds if we could. And hopefully, I just don't know when we're going to know how much money. Solange, do you have any idea, it's all about the state budget, right? And does anybody know?
Usually we don't know the amount of money before we have to put in.
That's true.
So we have to just kind of go off of what our previous year was. And this is how much the state gave us. This is how much the town gave us. And this is what we're going to do with it. We're going to allocate it this way or whatever way we're going to do. We have to do that before we actually know how much money we're getting.
But
It happens like that.
By the time we award it,
But by the time we awarded it, but in the sections that we have to do, like if we're going to be doing the 5% admin, if we're going to, and I know there's other questions.
Oh yeah, we have to do that next meeting too, right?
Yeah, we never know how much we're getting from the state when we go to do that
Right.
allocation. Always,
Okay, so
you know,
November 2nd will be sort of method and admin stuff. Okay, and what would it be helpful to have from Solange for everyone to look at in terms of referencing and to have that conversation? Or Solange, maybe I could rephrase the question. How were you going to, do you have a way you want to frame it for that discussion in terms of looking back? Because I can see the discussion bringing up questions about how do we do it then, and I think I have some spreadsheets that I had from last year, but then you've adapted them for yourself too. So in terms of what we want to look at and use, what do you guys think for that next conversation?
I think just figuring out, taking a look at I know that it was done kind of differently 2 years ago. We did it more of, like Deborah said, it was more mathematical. It was everybody gets X amount. We did 25% and then bumped everybody up to another percentage. So, and then from that, we looked at merit and did some adjustments according to, applications and stuff like that. Last year, it evolved to the discussion on a basically price per head, price per student. And so, but then that was also thought to not be completely equitable, because then there were discussions about some schools having more money than other schools and different things like that. So I think we need to take both and just smush them together and see if we can find a balance that will work, that you know, we have this information, but then also one thing we really need to be careful about is judging applications based on external information that we have because
Mhm.
we know people, and
Mhm.
it really needs to be subjective. And we need to base our information based on the applications that are put in front of us. We can't
Yeah,
just,
and yeah, and I
we
think
have
we've
to be
done,
very careful.
I think that we've tried to, we've realized that we needed more information, especially from the schools, and we needed to give more information. So, and we wanted to have the workshops, right? Where we had a better like give and take of what's going on with you guys and here's what we're looking for. And so far we've only been able to do here's what we're looking for. So to your point, yeah, we need to like stick with that. I mean, I think there's something to be said for sort of like institutional knowledge for people that have been in that space before. But I think you're right. And I think we have to keep working towards that too, in terms of like, but we've done a good job of saying like, here are the priorities, here's, you know, and then this year's going to be, we should know too, that it's going to be a little weird. So we won't, I don't, there'll certainly be some discussions of gray is what I'm expecting because of COVID. But we've given a lot of parameters too that hopefully will be those guideposts for us.
And also, one thing that we have this year that we didn't know that we had last year is we can always fund something on a contingency basis. So last year we had talked about not funding applicants because they didn't have a Norwood partner. It was, we have this great idea, we want to bring it to Norwood, but they hadn't yet connected. We can fund those on a contingency basis that they find a Norwood partner or explain better or have better information for us, that they have to say, you know, we are doing this for this with this person. So we, now that we understand that a little bit better, we have that option as well, that we can fund things on a contingency basis. And if they don't meet a specific criteria for funding, then they do not get funded. So that gives us a little bit more leeway that we didn't know we had last year.
Yeah. Yeah. Cause there was quite a few like cool projects that just didn't take place here or didn't like impact audiences here. And so we can go back to folks. That's a really good point. Okay, great. So I feel like we have a good framework for what we're going to go over that next on November 2nd. Anything else, you guys? Okay. I think we're all set then. Denise, are you good?
I'm good.
Okay, thanks. All right, everyone. I'm going to, does anyone make a motion to adjourn this meeting? That's what we need to do. Let's do that.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay.
Second.
All right, then we will adjourn for today and be back on the 2nd. Thank you all.
Right.